Good evening, members. Please be upstanding, and I will ask the Deputy Chairman to read the opening statement. Thank you.
Councillors, officers, ladies and gentlemen, in our deliberations today, let us again resolve to conduct ourselves here in a civil and tolerant manner, to ensure that our right to free expression is exercised with honesty and understanding for the views of others, and that our words are always calm, measured, and respectful towards our public, the council, and fellow members. May our decisions be just and fair, taken only with goodwill towards those we represent, and in the sincere belief that they are in the best interests of those who live and/or work in our unique historic county of Dorset. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Trite. Good evening and welcome everyone to our meeting on the 13th of February 2024. Agenda item 1 is to receive apologies, and I'll ask Susan Dallison to appraise us of who's not here. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Dover, Councillor Wharf, Councillor Carr-Jones, Councillor Fry, Councillor Barrow, Councillor Brown, Councillor Ezard, Councillor Rowe, Councillor Knox, Councillor Cocking, Councillor Dyer, Councillor Jill Taylor, Councillor Robin Cook, and Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Susan. Agenda item 2 is the minutes, and we need to approve the minutes of the meetings held on the 14th of
Chairman.
Sorry. And welcome, Councillor Barron. It's good to see you here. Okay. Right, we would now like to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 14th of December 2023. With your consent, please. Show of hands, thank you. Thank you very much. Agenda item 3 is declarations of interest, and we will ask Jonathan Mayer to read out the list of members who have declared an interest in agenda item 12, council tax premiums on second homes. So I'll ask Jonathan to do that now. Thank you.
Chairman, thank you. A number of councillors have disclosed to me as monitoring officer that they own additional property in Dorset, that is in addition to their main home, and rather than ask members to make individual disclosures now, I'll read the list of those who I'm expecting to be leaving the chamber. And those are Councillor Rod Adkins, Councillor Pauline Batstone, Councillor Tony Coombs, Councillor Spencer Flower, Councillor Robin Legg, Councillor John Orrell, Councillor Mike Parks, Councillor Gary Suttle, Councillor Jill Taylor, Councillor Bill Trite, and Councillor Sarah Williams. Is there anyone else who is expecting to leave for that item, please? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, hang on. We do have Councillor Rennie.
I need to declare an interest in item 10. I've taken advice on this because I have a relative who works for this council. I actually need to declare an interest, not take part in this agenda item, and I will leave the room.
You, Councillor Rennie. Do we have any other members needing to declare an interest on any other business of the agenda?
In light of Councillor Rennie's declaration, I also have a relative who does work for the council, so I will be taking no part in that item of debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any more, please? Sorry, who have we got?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm in a similar position as well. Thank you.
Right. Agenda item 4, the Chairman's announcements. And just to advise you that following the announcement from the Palace, I have forwarded this Council's best wishes to His Majesty the King for a speedy recovery. Also, I understand that this will be the final full Council meeting for Vivian Broadhurst, Executive Director of Adult Social Care and Housing. Vivian has been with us in Dorset since the summer of 2019 and has led the service through COVID and now the transformation that we see before us. Can I, on behalf of the Council, thank Vivian for her leadership, her resilience and her extremely hard work over the last nearly 5 years. Thank you, Vivian. We really appreciate you. Right. Okay. So we now have public participation, questions and statements. We have question 1 submitted by Penny Quilter. Please.
Good evening. Thank you for hearing my question. I'm Penny Quilter. I'm a resident in Weymouth. I'd like to ask about trees at the old council building at North Quay in Weymouth, which is currently being demolished. Permission was granted on the 20th of July 2023. The felling of 6 trees at the front of the building was carried out at the end of 2023, ostensibly, and I quote, to allow safe demolition of building. The building is being demolished from the rear, and it is unclear why it was necessary to remove these trees. According to the tree survey dated the 10th of February 23, one of the 6 trees was a semi-mature, and the rest were young, ranging from 4 metres to 8 metres in height, and included species of holly, silver birch, and ash. Only one of these trees was in poor condition. At the planning meeting on the 20th of July, it was suggested that these 6 trees might be replaced by specimens in pots. I understand that Dorset's tree planting objectives and those in the draft Weymouth Neighbourhood Plan are to increase tree cover. I trust that the treescape will be improved on the North Quay site with an overall increase in trees. Historic photographs show street trees in the pavement opposite the site when it was houses. It should be possible to thicken the existing street tree planting. This could be achieved as a planning condition for any future development. There are 7 mature birch trees in the car park area on the demolition site that do not appear in the tree survey, 4 on the east and 3 on the west side of the main building. These currently have barrier protection, and presumably these trees are to be protected and retained. So my question is, please can you comment as far as possible on the points that I've just made and confirm that a tree protection and replanting plan has been made for the site, and more specifically, confirm that the plan includes the replacement of the felled trees with an appropriate equivalent species to be planted in the ground. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Quilter. We will now receive a response from Councillor David Walsh.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for your question. It was necessary to remove the frontage trees to enable safe and effective operational access for machinery to carry out the demolition works. Given that the approved additional car park use is temporary, it was not considered conventional tree planting of a site allocated for redevelopment was appropriate. Hence, the compensatory provision approved was replacing 6 frontage trees with 10 trees in pots planters on the frontage. I confirm the 7 birch trees elsewhere on the site are retained.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. Our second question is from Rob Cheeseman.
Thank you. Rob Cheeseman, Weymouth resident. My question relates to flood risk in Weymouth. So there's been an expectation for some time that the Level 2 Strategic Flood Risk Assessment for Weymouth will be published by now. Following interactions with Weymouth Town Council, I understand there was a release date set for September 2023, following a briefing to Weymouth Town Council from Dorset Council. This release didn't happen and a future date wasn't set. I subsequently learned in November that the report would be formally released following discussions with the Environment Agency. Separate submissions by the Environment Agency to Weymouth Neighbourhood Plan Steering Group in December 2023 as part of Regulation 14 consultation indicated that the Environment Agency was satisfied that the Strategic Flood Risk Assessment had assessed the current and future flood risk for Weymouth town centre area. So my question is, when will the Level 2 Strategic Flood Risk Assessment for Weymouth be published, and what is the reason for the delay in its publication?
Thank you, Mr. Cheeseman. You will also receive a response from Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you, Mr. Cheeseman, for your question and my opportunity to clarify the point that we're at present. Officers in both the strategic planning and flood and coastal erosion teams have been working with consultants to prepare the Level 2 Strategic Flood Risk Assessment, SFRA, for Weymouth Town Centre. An important element of the SFRA is for the Environment Agency to update their advice to Dorset Council to reflect the findings of the SFRA. This process is now drawing to an end, and I'm pleased to say this will enable the SFRA to be published later in February. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. Question 3 is from Arthur Schaefer. Sorry, Mr. Schaefer is not in attendance, and so we're going to take the question as read, and Councillor Ray Bryan will read out a response. Thank you.
We don't look quite the same. Good evening, everybody. Councillor Jill Haynes from Chalk Valleys Ward, and I am portfolio holder for corporate development and transformation. So thank you, Mr. Schaefer, for your question. The exception you refer to in your question is one of a list of potential exceptions looked at during a national consultation. We await the final supporting regulations, as do all local authorities, which will stipulate the exact detail. It is anticipated that where an exception may have an associated maximum set period of award, that this will be fixed. But as with all exceptions, we are only able to provide guidance on possible outcomes at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haynes, and my apologies. Question 4 is a question from Alex Bailey.
I think that's correct. Can everyone hear me? So what a whirlwind 2023 has been for all of us. Despite the challenges, I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to everyone who collaborated with me during that tumultuous time. Your contributions were truly invaluable to the campaign, even though my involvement has since come to an end. Unfortunately, Councillor Flower chose not to share the advice from Richard Wall, KC, publicly, and my opinion of him then remains unchanged, as reported by the Dorset Echo. Let's now turn to our attention to the future, specifically focusing on the current budgetary situation. We must consider the insights provided by individuals such as Weymouth Town Councillor David Gray, as well as perspectives offered by Dorset's Lone Ranger, Councillor Gary Settle. Additionally, we should take into account the remarks made by Dorset's Treasury Manager, David Wilkes, regarding the concerning borrowing trends, with a total of 219 million borrowed and 7 million spent on interest to service external debt. These figures paint a bleak picture of Dorset Council's financial health, especially when coupled with a year-on-year 5% increase in rates for most households, particularly those in Band D in Weymouth. Despite these challenges, there are still some council officers and individuals in this chamber who maintain that Dorset Council possesses sufficient emergency funds. We cannot ignore the dire financial situation faced by Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole, BCP Council, which is burdened with nearly a staggering £1 billion in debt. Given these circumstances, my question remains, what distinguishes Dorset ratepayers that Dorset Council consistently ranks as third and sometimes fourth highest spender per head of population in England? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Out of curiosity and for clarification, could you tell me which campaign you referred to, please?
Yes, that campaign was the No to the Barge even campaign.
Thank you very much. You'll now receive a response from Councillor Sattle. Possibly Councillor Haynes.
Well, thank you for the question. Disappointingly, although I was able to hire the Lone Ranger suit, it had to come in twos, and the leader refused to dress as Tonto, which I think is somewhat spoiling the evening, really. However, in response, so we appear to ask 4 different points, as far as I can see. The first one, you made the point about King's Council, and Councillor Flower has actually already answered a question in this chamber and explained the advice we received from King's Council. Now, turning to a second point on council borrowing. Dorset Council typically borrows money to finance capital projects that will have a long-term benefit for the population of Dorset. This is not borrowing to fund day-to-day service delivery. The Council's borrowing is outlined in Appendix 3 of Item 9 on this evening's agenda. Para 3.3 has a table showing the Council's gross debt of £219 million as of the 31st of March 2023. As set out in the table following Para 3.6 of the same report, the Council has set an operational boundary of borrowing of £443 million. So the council borrowing is less than 50% of the operational boundary. You also raise the level of interest payable, which is £8 million for 23-24, and that's shown in Table 8, Para 4.2. The same table shows that the council is forecasting £6 million of investment income driven by interest earned. So the net financing costs are £2 million, which represents 3.8% of the net revenue streams. I hope that highlights the analysis contained within Appendix 3 and allays your concerns as to the impact of the Council's borrowing. The third item was adequacy of emergency funds. Again, turning to the main body of the report, Para 22.4 outlines general fund reserves have increased from 28.2 million of 31st of March 2020 to 34.75 million as of 31st of March 2023. And earmark reserves have increased from 85.4 million to 140.9 over the same period. The reference to having third or fourth highest spend per head, I think there's a bit of confusion here, but spend per head, this is not true. The Office for National Statistics data clearly shows Dorset Council as very much middle of the pack in terms of relative spend per head of population. And I think what's happened here is there's a misinterpretation of a widely reported information that Dorset's relative position in terms of council tax. So as reported in the Place and Resources Committee on the 17th of January, of the parts of council tax which council sets, Dorset is ranked 13th. You may recall that some years ago we were third, and that is now 13th. So as outlined in the paper, Dorset core spending power increases is reliant upon council tax, with a government expectation that councils take the maximum flexibility. The leader of this council continues to lobby with our local MPs for a fairer funding settlement to address this. Recent success here is seen by the final local government finance settlement, providing a further 3.9 million for Dorset Council, which is in recognition of social care home-to-school transport and rural service delivery. Dorset's MP, Chris Loder, has also, in the last fortnight, met with the Treasury and the Prime Minister to discuss Dorset's finances, seeking solutions to the systemic underfunding that we suffer. Thank you.
Thank you for the very fulsome response, Councillor Suttle. Okay. Agenda item 6. There are no petitions or deputations. So we do move on to agenda item 7, announcements and reports from the leader, and I'll hand you over to Councillor to the leader, to Spencer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I think it's my 19th Leaders' Bulletin. I did say in the first meeting that I would do a bulletin at the end of each meeting to reflect on what I may or may not have said during the course of my announcements. So I've called this a reflection on the first term of Dorset Council, because this may well be the last full council before the 2nd of May. It depends whether there's any business. All the signs are there will not be any business, but who knows? So I thought I would take the opportunity and not miss the opportunity just to reflect on just what we have achieved in the first 5-year term of this council. I said, many of you have heard me say this more than once, that when I made my acceptance speech in May 2019, I said my ambition was to work across the chamber in a collaborative way, because we were all here to serve the people that had elected us. And I think we've done a pretty good job, actually. And I think we've achieved a huge amount. And my gut feeling is if we hadn't have done, we might be in the same position as some of the councils immediately around us. But that's another thing. And in recognition of the ethos that I promoted around this working across parties, I was fortunate and very proud to have been shortlisted for the Council Leader of the Year in 2023. And I came in the last 5 out of over 200 nominations. We went to London. I didn't get the top prize, but I was assured by many colleagues that we should reflect. And in fact, I did reflect on that. I wasn't there as me. I was there because of what we'd done in this chamber. So I was there for Dorset Council rather than myself personally. So I've said a number of things here. I won't go on into all of it, colleagues, but we will publish this after the meeting. But I just wanted to reflect on a couple of things that are sort of highlighted. And Gary's mentioned a couple of things around the constant lobbying to try and get a better deal. And my view is if you don't ask, you don't get. You have to keep pursuing it. We have some success. Do we have all the success we would like? No, we don't. But we have to continue pursuing that. And I've mentioned it in here about the demographics of Dorset, about the challenges of rurality and so on. They're all factors that cause us to look at ways to become more and more efficient. And the way we've done that, we've done a huge amount of work over the last 5 years in that sort of stuff. But I just touched on the day-to-day stuff, because I think one of the things we do really well is we do the day-to-day stuff of the waste collections and all the things that the people can see that they expect from any council, let alone this one. And I think we've done really well on that. And it would be remiss of me not to mention tonight the announcement, I think it was last week, from DEFRA that we're now seen as the #1 unitary council in the country for recycling. That's a huge achievement. In a young council, in the first 5 years of a council, 59%. I think the national average is about 43%. So we're not just marginally better than others, we're significantly better than others, and we should all of us in this chamber be very, very proud of what we achieved. And we need to pay credit to the people of Dorset who have really embraced the issues around recycling and so on. So huge credit to them as well. We put the system in place and they've used it. And I think we should be really, really satisfied with that. And some of you will be aware there's a move now to come up with a national minimum standard. Dorset meets all of that national minimum standard with 1 or 2 minor exceptions. We're already there. We did it 10 or 12 years ago, I think. We did it with our own money when we were a county and we were districts. We all got together and we made that decision to go for it. And my goodness, haven't we benefited from that down the years? We're saving 4 or 5 million a year because we're doing that. And I meet lots of councils in my district council network, more than anywhere. and they haven't. Some of them are still using black bags. They were years back. They don't even collect kitchen waste every week. We've been doing it for the last 12 years. So we should be really proud of what we've achieved there, Chairman. But also, you've obviously got the work around the local plan, huge amount of work going on there, so important for us to embrace. In my view, we should be embracing the changes to the planning philosophy is set out in the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act, as it is now. We're just waiting for the regulations to be published. Huge opportunities for us to do something that's more strategic, that better reflects the needs and aspirations for the people of Dorset. And I hope we pursue that with vigour. So the other thing I suppose I should talk about very quickly, although I will come back to it later when we talk about budgets, is how we've embraced transformation. Had we not embraced transformation the way we have done, and I think done extremely well, we would have had to have balanced budgets through service cuts in the way that many other councils have done. So again, I look across this chamber and say well done to all of you for embracing that philosophy and making it work. So finally, this may well be the last chance I've got to say this in this term as leader. So thank you very much for all the work you've all done collectively in making life as good as we can for the people of Dorset. It's something that I feel very passionate about. So a good place to work, live and visit. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Flower. Did we have any questions for the leader? Councillor Kimber.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Spencer, for your presentation. Yes, and I certainly welcome your statement on recycling, and that is so important. And I hope we move on from, is it 59% you said? I know the old Weymouth and Portland actually did go above 59%. I want to just ask you the question around fairer funding. This, for me, is so essential. This cuts right across the political parties. And I think instead of just, I know you can lobby your own government quite easily, and I do lobby my own people as well on this, but it wouldn't hurt, I don't think, from a letter from this council, cross-party, to all political parties, that we see this as essential. I'll try and draw a bit more out during the budget speech on that, but thank you. If I can put that forward, can we try and do something right across this council? Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Absolutely right, because I do know that if you look at our medium-term financial plan and you look at funding generally in local government sector, beyond the year that we're going to hopefully agree our budget this evening, it's a pretty stark outlook. Unless there is significant and targeted additional funding coming into local government from central government, I think we're all going to be in a difficult place. We've got rurality, we've got the demographic that we've got to deal with, and delivering services in our sparsely broadly rural area with obviously some urban parts of it as well is a real challenge, and it's not just Dorset, it's right across the whole of the UK. So I'd be amazed if any government, regardless of its colour, Paul, will have no choice but to look at how local government is funded properly. The review is long overdue. The matrix that's used to determine how that money is distributed. The pot needs to get bigger. Redistributing the pot we've already got would be, I mean, we've heard it said, Gary's mentioned it, I've mentioned it. We get 700,000 for our revenue support grant. There's councils who get 30 or 40 million. And one of them issued a 114 notice. So you have to wonder why did that happen? So you make a really good point, and I think we should be looking at making sure that Westminster as a whole, regardless of the party, are aware of the challenges of local government finance.
Thank you. Councillor Ireland?
Yeah, Nick Island, Crossways Ward. We've heard from the leader that lobbying for central government has gone on. We've heard that for the last 5 years. And we've also heard that Chris Loder, MP, currently for West Dorset, has been active. I just wondered what the other 4 MPs, which cover Dorset Council's area, Tomlinson, Chope, not Chope, Christopher Chope? He is, yeah, East Dorset. Simon Hoare, and who's the other one? Drax. How could I forget him? What have they been doing?
Well, Nick, I couldn't have given you a fiver to get you to ask me a better question, really, because as some of you will be aware, Simon Hoare MP became the local government minister in the last reshuffle. And you would expect, Simon is my local MP in North Dorset, very active, done a huge amount of work. And I have to say that he took a particular interest because he used to be a parish, district and a county councillor back in the day. So he's got knowledge and experience of local government. And I'm aware that he lobbied very, very hard. I don't give him an easy time. Those of you who know that in the association know I don't, because I think we should always challenge each other. And he had a great hand in that extra funding that came out in the final settlement. And a huge credit to Simon. I know he put that effort in to get that extra funding, because you always get resistance, but he pushed that resistance back. And that's how we got the 600 million, which we got 3.9 million of. So I'm grateful for that effort. And the others, I know that others have made statements in the House, because I've been tipped off, and I've put my anorak on, and I've gone and listened to them, because I want to see what they're saying. They've all made contributions when we've had debates on local government finance, and all you can do is continue to lobby hard. That's a challenge. These things get recorded in Hansard, so that's a really good thing to happen, because it reflects on, it's not just a hearsay, it's stuck in there, and hopefully it'll help us in the future.
Thank you. Sorry. Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor John Andrews from Sherborne East, the most beautiful town in Dorset. I just asked the leader didn't miss out highways off of his bulletin. I think our highways do a tremendous job. Recently, in the last 10 days, I've travelled through to Somerset, to Taunton, to Musgrove Park Hospital, unfortunately, for a relative's illness. And the roads, when you come out of Dorset and go into Somerset, are absolutely atrocious.
Excuse me, Councillor Andrew, can I interrupt you there? I'm afraid you can only ask a question relating to the leader's report. What? Sorry, it's not personal. It's always nice to hear your voice, but the rules is the rules is. Thank you. Councillor Christopher.
Would the leader confirm that he won't take too much advice from the Labour group in circumstances where in 2010 the Secretary to the Treasury left a note saying there wasn't any money left?
Excuse me, Councillor, that wasn't a question. And I don't think there are any more. We're going to move smartly on to agenda item 8. Thank you. Perhaps we'll leave that for another day, Councillor Kimber. So we have come on to questions from Dorset councillors, and the first one has been submitted by Councillor Trite to my left. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Since the Dorset Council members for Swanage have lately received a high number of complaints from residents concerning the extreme intensity of LED street lighting recently installed in various residential roads in the town. And 2, on investigating, both members fully agreed with complainants that the lighting is extraordinarily harsh and intense, amounting to a serious intrusive nuisance for occupiers of homes thus affected. And 3, the members consider it not unreasonable for the residents subject to this nuisance to suggest that the wrong specification of lighting unit could have been installed for the category of streets concerned. Then what action will the council urgently take to remedy the present most unsatisfactory situation currently being experienced by residents? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Trite, of course, represents Swanage. We'll now ask for a response, please, from Councillor Bryan.
Yes, good evening, everybody. Councillor Ray Bryan, portfolio holder for highways. Thank you, John. Travel and environment, climate change, harbours, and anything else that's going my way. I'm pleased to respond that I've asked the corporate director for highways to carry out a policy review of our street lighting, and I'm expecting that to happen fairly quickly. So thank you for raising the question.
Thank you, Councillor Bryan. I believe Councillor Trite has a supplementary question. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and my thanks to Councillor Bryan for a very extensive and complex response to that one. Will the... But nevertheless, to the point and very welcome. Will the review, Councillor Bryan, will the review include consideration of the replacement of these high correlated colour temperature lights, which have caused so much dissatisfaction, with more resident-friendly low CCT lighting, particularly since this is all happening within an AONB, or which is now, I believe, a national landscape is the terminology. And the part of the town most affected by all this is right next to a Dark Skies Discovery site at Durlston. Thank you.
Was that a question, Councillor?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Will the review include those?
Yes. Now, in fairness, obviously it'll be subject to the review, but the answer is if things are found to be incorrect or not as good as we would like, we will take the necessary action.
Thank you, Councillor Bryan. So question 2 is submitted by Councillor Weller.
Whoops. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Although I'm not actually withdrawing my question, I'm not going to ask it. I'm sure many of you have read it. I'm not going to ask it. I've spoken to the head of highways and the matter is now in hand. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Weller. I do believe we have a response for you, though, from Councillor Bryan. Or perhaps it's somebody else.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the question, Councillor Weller, about the tragedy at Woodland Gardens. It's been in the news. It's subject to a court case at the moment, as you're aware. So my answer is I'd like to be able to answer the question in full and also to address what I consider to be unfair criticism of the officers, because they are governed by law, and of me personally. However, whilst a criminal case against the driver of the vehicle is under consideration, it would be entirely wrong for me to comment, as with the officers.
Councillor Weller.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. May I point out that I have never made any criticism of officers, and I'm very well aware of the situation. An email in response stating what you've just said would have made none of this, made all of this unnecessary. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Weller. Thank you, Councillor Bryan. So we now arrive at agenda item 9, the budget strategy. I'm going to ask Councillor Gary Suttle to introduce the report and propose the recommendations. Councillor Suttle.
You knew it had to come. Right. I present the budget strategy and medium-term financial plan report for your attention. The budget proposals follow significant consultation with councillors. Indeed, we've seen the most extensive level of meetings, discussions, task and finish groups, and of course, both scrutiny committees. I thank all those involved, and Councillors Taylor and Bartlett for the scrutiny process. Thank you. The headline is, of course, the increase in annual council tax, which will be just under 3%. In addition, this council will take the social care precept of just under 2% to ensure the funding of social care. The actual figure of uplift is 4.996%. In financial terms, it is £1.82 per week on a Band D property. The report sets out that we're anticipating significant growth in business rates, 5% increase in fees and charges, with 3.2% for inflation. I think that's borne out by recent figures which support that assumption as inflation comes under control and falls from the heady heights of 10+% to a more recent 4% for 12 months to December 2023. There's been much made of government announcements which appear to indicate significant additional funding, giving our core spending power an uplift of 6.5%. However, despite the press, in fact, to achieve this, we have to take the maximum council tax increase, and this equates to 66% of the uplift. So perhaps not quite the saviour of local government, more of save yourself. Many councils are receiving funding via revenue support grant. Many councils receiving millions of pounds. Not the case for Dorset. We are to receive the grand sum of £698,000 this year, an enormous uplift of £43,000. For the benefit of members, choose the graph, and you will see Leicester receiving £35.6 million, and you'll probably just see us as a tiny little red bar, hence the arrow, almost at the bottom. And this is why the leader spends so much time lobbying for fairer funding. It's not a myth. As you can see, there is money out there. The strategy sets out the process and taking regard to the MTP-FP and how we have progressed over the last few months. The original gap was identified at 13.815 million. However, this escalated to a point in November 23 when I reported an increased position of 23 million. Over the last few months, we've worked with the directorates to consider how a balanced budget can be achieved. And in the report, we present our criteria that will enable us to do that. We include substantial increases in budgets for all directorates, as set out in the report, and in particular place where we've seen the most pressure over the last year. It's very exposed to inflation and is important that it is funded adequately to maintain and protect the services we provide. Well, let's talk about the one thing that appears to have had more attention than anything else, and that's the element of the budget attributed to our future council. Originally, that budget figure was £12,040,831. And this is work that would have been a natural progression for this council. I would have liked to start this work at least a year earlier, maybe even two. There was something called COVID that delayed much of what would have been a normal work stream for this 5 years. The point of LGR was to protect the services provided by Dorset councils to the community. It was not an option to continue in the format pre-LGR. Too much financial pressure, particularly on the old county structure, to allow it to continue. The business plan of LGR was to enable a stable structure of local government moving forward, but with the understanding this had to be underpinned by substantial savings. And our future council work is an extension of that. Some tell me they're worried about the level of money included in this budget. I refer this to the administration's track record. Savings of over 96 million to ensure the principal LGR protected Dorset, enabling support and continuation of all services. In-year budgets closely adhering to their projected outcomes. Not a reduction in reserves, but a solid increase in the general fund throughout the period to maintain this council's 10% reserve of council tax. That's correct. not a reduction in reserves. You have to consider that each year has an element of money for reserves, and when the budget falls short in year, that element is reduced. We work on our future council as part of a council invest to save policy. We've included the original figure of 12 million, which as per the addendum to the budget, is now just above the £8 million figure. As a prudent assessment of what we would hope to save, not a target. If we want to use targets, we can use £20 million plus, because our aim with this work is to address the longer-term requirements of this council's medium-term financial plan. I have stressed throughout the time that I've been in this position, we are dealing with the long-term financial security of Dorset, not in-year shortages, and this work is part of our aim. To give you reassurance, at the half-year stage in 2024, the Section 151 officer will review the work and assess at that time if it is on target. If not, I give an assurance that we would restructure the budget. However, I don't believe that this will be necessary, and this work would not be in the budget if any doubt existed. I propose the budget papers with the addendum to this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Suttle. Councillor Flower.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I'm pleased to second the recommendation and reserve the right to come back at the end.
Thank you, Councillor Flower. Right, I'm now going to invite Councillor Nick Ireland to make his budget speech. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Nick Ireland, Crossways. So back in late 2022, we were in the process, as we've been recently, of producing the budget for this financial year. And the papers published then identified a budget gap going forward, and that's the budget before us now of approximately £13 million. So we fast forward to this year's budget process, and this has been going on since November. And the one thing that's bugged me and other members, and Councillor Suttle has just mentioned it, and it's also the subject of an amendment later on in this process, is that we were told repeatedly that our One Future Council programme will save us £12 million going forward. But no detail was provided as to what that would entail, and this is throughout the whole Budget Café and 2 scrutiny meetings. Or we were told that it would be underwritten from reserves, but we probably wouldn't need to use them. Back in November, Councillor Beddoes sent out an email to all members with a link to the OFC intranet site. In fact, it was sent out twice because the first link didn't work. But I looked at the site then, took a copy, and it was clear that it existed from at least July 2023. And there was a comment on there from staff member that basically said, this means job cuts then. And it hadn't been updated since July. The site then contained no details of the programme and how the savings would be achieved. However, since January, it's had a rapid refresh, but still no details or specifics of how the 12 million of savings, which is an assessment, as has just been said, not a target, will materialise. So it's not clear to me how you can state a nice, and in the context of this budget, a conveniently dovetailing figure of 12 million savings, matching last year's shortfall, how they will materialise when the details aren't known. So in the last few weeks, we've had a nice Brucey bonus from the government, 3.9 million of savings that were basically in the original budget, which was, we were told, balanced, and savings that could be achieved. They've now disappeared into the ether, not that they ever appeared from there in the first place. And we have a different balanced budget from 2 weeks ago. This leads to 3 possibilities, in my view. The forecast last year was accurate, but this council, despite having over a year to do so, has been unable to specifically identify the savings that can be made. So we're filling the gaps from reserves without explicitly saying so. Or number 2, the forecasting was flawed. I don't think it was, but it would be worrying if it was. And therefore we would be out by a factor of 100%, £30 million now required. Of that, £18 million has been identified in the budget, but we're 12 million short. Or rather we were, now we're only 8 million apparently. So we're filling the gaps from reserve without explicitly saying so. Or third, which I suspect is probably the real answer to this, and I'm going to be asking this question, the means of achieving the stated 12 million via OFC is actually known. Because, well, how else could you come up with a number? But the details are so unpalatable, especially with elections coming up in May, that the current leadership of this council is unwilling to divulge the details for fear of the consequences. So my question is, which of those is it? Thank you.
Councillor Suttle, were you going to answer that?
To avoid it, but... Our future council work is about a review of the procedures in place within this council that we believe there are savings to be made. I don't think there's anything unpalatable about them. I'm not aware of anything that would frighten anybody other than to make us more efficient and maintain services, which is what we should all be striving to do. And I think if you were setting a budget tonight, you'd be doing exactly the same as me. People seem to be worried about this work, but the track record is that we save money. We have done it. It's not something that it's in the ether. It's not a maybe we should or maybe we shouldn't. The fact is, we've already saved £96 million. It's a fact. I don't think that there's anything within here that I wouldn't say that, to any member of the staff. I'm certainly not concerned about staff redundancies, although I know that you are because I've seen that you've mentioned it before. I believe that we have an opportunity here to provide a better, leaner, meaner council to maintain the services to Dorset, and that's what this is about. Of your questions, no, I have no secrets. I have nothing unpalatable to hide. It is what it is. Thank you. But can we just go back to the 8 million? Bear in mind that there's £5 million with contingency in there as well within the budget. And also people have criticised the 3.9 coming off of that figure. But bear in mind, we've already put all of the additional funding into all of the directorates that have asked. We've matched what they've asked for to ensure that we can maintain the services that they provide at the levels they want to provide. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Suttle. Right, Councillor Claire Sutton.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Claire Sutton, Rodwell and Wyke. I understand I have 3 minutes, so I'll be concise. Whilst safe and legal, we think our last 4 budgets lacked ambition, but we voted for them. I have 3 main points on this budget. First, on avoiding cuts in services, we haven't seen whole council services practically disappear, as happened when Dorset County Council removed almost all support for youth clubs in 2016, but we have seen an ongoing erosion of the services we provide. Planning enforcement is just a single example, but I'm particularly concerned about implicit cuts which affect the most vulnerable, especially the higher eligibility requirements for adult social care. The root cause is that successive governments have slashed funding to Dorset Council by half since 2010. In addition, as we know, the funding formula does not recognise that we have far more older residents than average. About 30% are aged 65 or over, compared to 20% nationally. I hope our next government, of whatever complexion, will restore responsible funding for local councils and treat adult social care as a national service like the NHS. Given where we are, though, regrettably, we feel we've little choice but to support the proposed 5% increase in council tax. Secondly, Dorset Council has used almost £40 million of reserves to fund unplanned overspends since 2019. In this budget, the £8 million gap will ostensibly be filled by savings identified through the Our Future Council programme, but despite repeated questioning by Councillor Heatley, Councillor Gray and others, we still have no detail about how this will be achieved. Brian and I will address this in our proposed amendment. And on ambition, firstly, we have a major housing crisis, and we also have lots of surplus council land and buildings. How are we going to keep young people in our county and attract, for example, the care workers who many of our residents rely on? Surely we must bring the two together and start building social housing. Second, we have a public transport crisis, especially in our rural areas. Rather than continue to subsidise bus companies, we must work out how we can deliver this ourselves, aligned with the school and hospital transport we already provide. We've been talking about this, but don't appear to have made much progress. Third, we know that good quality, accessible youth clubs mean happier young people, better mental health and less antisocial behaviour. We've just had a £4 million present from the government, but heard about it too late to include this in our amendment. Some of us, and you know who you are, have been talking about a cost of living fund for our youth clubs for some time. And I hope that what we agreed will soon be implemented. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sutton, for your extended 3 minutes. I'm now going to ask Councillor Hughes.
Sorry, Councillor Sutton wants to...
Oh, sorry. Councillor Sutton wants to respond to your speech. Thank you.
Well, that's an interesting speech. Do you want to join us or should I join you? Because you've said most of the things that I agree with most of the things you've said. I mean, virtually all of them. They're very good. I'm sort of sorry that I can't give you specifics about our future council because I would love to. But I couldn't tell you what we save for 96 million on either, specifically, right now. My aim would be to give regular updates to tell you exactly as the savings go on, as the coming year goes. It depends on the electorate, but I shouldn't think it's a problem. That's a joke, okay. And I'm going to give you a personal opinion about land and housing because I very rarely get the opportunity to do that. I think that we do own loads of little pockets of land in strategic places all round Dorset. And if we funded community land trusts more to exploit this land, gave them the land, built local housing in local places, and if I'm stood here in May or June, I will be bringing that forward as a proposal because that's what we should do. I might not get support, but I think that's exactly what we should do. And I think everybody in this room should support it because that's an easy way, a very easy way of getting housing to the places that it should be for essential workers, local people, everything we want to do. And we've already got the land. We just have to be innovative and think about what we can do. We're doing it in Swanage. We've already started one scheme, just one scheme. But I'm hoping to expand that. And I'm hoping that the council would support me in that come next term. Anyway, but even if I'm sat there, I can still propose it. And maybe someone else, if someone else is sat, they could take it up. And you could lobby them when you join us. So that's fine. But I'd like to thank you for the speech. I saw it as supportive. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Suttle. Councillor Rob Hughes, please.
Good evening, Chair, members, officers of the Council. Councillor Rob Hughes for the Isle and Royal Manor of Portland and Vice Chair of the Independent Group. We accept the proposed setting of this budget for the coming financial year 24-25 in these challenging times when costs, inflation and interest rates have been changing every month. It felt like it cannot have been an easy task to undertake, I'm sure. I would personally like to pass on our thanks to all of the officers and members of the Council involved in this process, as well as the members of the scrutiny committees for their careful consideration of all the planned costings proposed within the budget. Keeping all of our services running smoothly across Dorset for all of our communities and residents within a budget is key to the success, not only of this council, but also for the next council after the local elections in May. So I thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. I don't think Councillor Suttle's racing to respond to anything you've said there.
You caught me in mid-lozenge. Once again, thank you. I don't think I have anything to add other than, again, I find myself agreeing with you. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Regarding Councillor Kimber, I understand that currently you do not have a formal Labour group. Excuse me. So I'm unable to invite you to produce a budget speech, but I will ensure that your voice is heard in the debate first. Thank you. Councillor Heatley. Sorry? Councillor Heatley, please.
Brian Heatley, councillor for Robwell and Wyke in Weymouth. I'd like to propose formally at this stage the amendment that's in my name. Councillor Sutton will be seconding it in a moment and introduce it. I'd like then to be able to speak later in the debate, if I may, before Councillor Sutton winds up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Heatley. I'll make a note. Councillor Sutton.
Thank you, Chair. Well, first of all, aren't we all going to miss Brian, especially Gary and Aidan? There's a strong rationale for this amendment, which I'm going to try and explain in a way that even the less numerate of us can understand. The simple version is, this budget relies on £8 million of what is termed our future council savings. Yet, despite being repeatedly questioned about this for many months, portfolio holder Jill Haynes and council leader Spencer Flower have failed to provide any detail. Passing this as it stands, in effect, sets up the new council as of the 2nd of May to record a deficit in 24-25 of £8 million if savings are not made. Given that national polling suggests there's a reasonable chance that it will not be Tory-led, we wonder if you are setting up the new council to fail in this regard. So this amendment is just about being honest. The more complicated version is, if the entirely unspecified £8 million worth of savings are not found, the budget is underwritten by reserves, as you said. There's a clue to the fact that this administration is reticent about this saving, in that it's hard to find in the main budget table in Appendix A, in Appendix 1. It's this tiny little number down here. Sorry, I've lost my place. Yes, it's the 8.122 million in brackets in the penultimate column, headed Movement Imbalances in the general funding line. As a negative expenditure, it gets taken away from the net budget requirement. Other councils are using reserves to balance the books. The local government minister is urging councils to do so. And we'll have to spend nearly £40 million of our reserves financing cumulative overspends in our first 5 years. So we've been tacitly doing this anyway. Surely we should be transparent. This gap will probably be funded from reserves, and we should say so. The amendment crosses out the negative 8.122 million in the general funding line and replaces it with a separate line on this being funded from reserves. In an article in Conservative Home last year, the leader referenced Dorset Council's strong focus on sound financial management. This means having a budget where every line is well supported. This budget does that, but with one key exception, the entirely unsubstantiated assumption of £8.1 million of savings. We think this council should take responsibility for the present situation and hand on a neutral, transparent and balanced budget to its successor, not one that presents it with an £8 million deficit. So please vote for this modest, fair and straightforward amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sutton. I have had hands going up, which of course, now we've had an amendment, I'd like you to put your hands down and start again. I understand Councillor Flower would like to respond to the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And I'm sure Gary will want to say something as well in a moment.
Thank you.
Normally, I have much respect for the diligence and constructive challenge which Brian Heatley brings to a debate, but I'm afraid this is not one of those occasions. The amendment to use 8.1 million of reserves rather than the same amount from efficiency savings in the first phase of our future Dorset transformation. This amount, identified in the budget, is only part of a possible £15 to £20 million, Gary mentioned it earlier, potential for such savings to be achieved through a review of structures and processes. It's an area of transformation that we haven't got particularly close to, which is another fertile area that we can get our costs down so we can use the funding to deliver the services that I know the people of Dorset rely on. This approach will also help to safeguard the future years from the need for service cuts to balance budgets. As a member of the Place and Resources Scrutiny Committee, it's disappointing it didn't take the opportunity to have this suggested amendment included in the recommendations from that committee. In mentioning scrutiny, it would be remiss of me not to give credit to Councillor Jill Taylor and Shane Bartlett for the diligence and rigour that they bring in this respective committees once again brought to the budget setting for this year. This amendment goes against the amazing success this council has achieved by embracing transformation rather than service cuts to balance budgets. With over 100 million, Gary said 96, it's around 100 million savings, projected to be more than that, maybe up to 120 by the end of this term. We've never used reserves to achieve a balanced budget, and we should not start now. Other councils, some of whom are our immediate neighbours, who have not embraced transformation the way that Dorset Council has, are now faced with the consequences of having to make cuts of services to balance achieving a balanced budget. The use of one-off money compared with the long-term reductions in revenue expenditure must never be as a long-term solution, Chairman. I therefore can't support this amendment this evening and urge other members in the Chamber to do so, not to do so either.
Thank you, Councillor Flower. Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Councillor Louis O'Leary, Littlemore and Preston Ward, where despite national polls, we stayed true blue last month. So the polls don't mean everything. My question to Councillor Suttle on the future council plan is it sets out the intention to save £8 million through a future phase of transformation, which is based on a review of processes and structures across all the departments. Can this be explained in a bit more detail so there is no misunderstanding regarding the suggestion that unallocated reserves are earmarked as a safeguarding when setting a balanced budget? I know you've already touched on this. And I just want to say here, unlike the crowd up in Westminster, we have to have a balanced budget, period. The folks up in Westminster, you know, they can run huge deficits and run around promising $1 billion here and $1 billion there. But rightly and properly, they force us to have a balanced budget. There's no alternative. And once again, we have a budget where we're putting council tax up by 5%, the same old story, the last couple of budgets. The issue is when it comes to council tax, it's time to admit that it is the most stupidest, regressive, outdated form of taxation going. It penalises homeowners and private property. It's manually put up every year as opposed to most forms of taxation that are done on a percentage. And it has to be looked at, I say, on a yearly basis as opposed to rising with inflation like every other. It's out of date, and it's time I think everybody realise that, and it's time that we start lobbying government to replace it with a more acceptable form of taxation, such as a localised sales tax. Anyway, I will vote for this budget with everything taken into account, and it's a good budget. It balances the budget and pays for government. More importantly, it is the only thing on the table. The Leader of the Opposition once again comes here. He hasn't got his little toy groundhog this year. But he moans a lot, he votes against budget after budget, never brings forward an alternative of any kind. And that's why I will actually thank Councillor Heatley and follow on what others said. He is someone that I greatly admire and have a lot of respect for, and I know my late friend, Councillor Ferrari, had a great deal of respect for him as well as a fellow numbers man. So I thank him for putting his money, even if it is £8 million where his mouth is, on this amendment. Members across this chamber would be delighted to hear that this is probably one of the last times I'll ever speak in this chamber, as I've crossed swords with many of you over the years. But one thing I have learned in the 5 years I've been here is something I learned in sports many years ago, and that is not all the good players are on the one team, and not all the stupid ones are on that side either. And we have one mutual challenge and one mutual goal as councillors, and whether May brings another Conservative administration or a Liberal administration led by the member from Wimborne, or if a Red Dawn, or
Or if a Red Dawn...
It's enough, thank you. Order. Thank you, that's quite enough. Councillor Kimber, speaking to the amendment, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Paul Kimber, Portland. I should be supporting the amendment, and I really want to know what the effect of efficiency savings will mean on our workforce. As you all know, before I became a Dorset councillor, I was a trade union official and spent many hours with redundancy situations. Now, what I don't know is what this knock-on effect will mean. And I would ask you if you could let us know, well, to sum it up, what the effects of this is. It seems to me very, very logical to take it from the reserves. As we've said, the next council will have a very difficult problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kimber. Councillor Suttle will have the right to reply before we go to the vote on this. So I'm hoping he's writing down his answers for that. Next, Councillor Ireland, please.
Yeah, Councillor Ireland, Crossways. The amendment basically says where I said there's savings there that we don't know. We don't know how we're going to make them. And the amendment gives me the opportunity to speak again, for which I'm thankful. So I'm reliably informed that Councillor Suttle, in relation to the £8.1 million of savings underpinned by reserves, and I quote, "I can't tell you how we will make it." So there you go.
Councillor Ireland. Councillor Lacey-Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Nocturne Lacey-Clark from Blandford Forum, most beautiful town in North Dorset. Obviously the best hair in the council. Councillor Heatley, I absolutely agreed with this amendment when I first heard about it, because I asked some very similar questions. I was very uncomfortable in some of the process where we were saying, we've just got this number we're going to save. I don't work like that and on that sort of thing. I struggle without having the detail. And so I had a really useful meeting with, I think it's Sean Kramer, Aidan's right-hand man, I want to say. And he explained to me how it's absolutely standard for there to be assumed savings within all the budgets, and they are all the way through the council. And in reality, our future council, nice, pretty new name for sales purposes, I'm sure, has actually been something we've been doing since the moment the council came together. And we have shown, historically, year on year, we have made savings greater than this through the efficiencies we are constantly finding in all the different areas of the council. And this is actually a continuation of that, an exceptionally reasonable figure to have in there. So I'm not going to support it because I've had an answer that I'm really happy with from one of the officers that to me explains it away, so I see no reason to do this. But I did have the same concerns as you, and I'm really thankful that they've now been answered.
Thank you, Councillor Lacey-Clark. Councillor Christopher.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Simon Christopher, Dorset Councillor, Marshwood Vale. Thank you ever so much. In the risks section of the covering report, I think it's on page 25 if you want to consider it, it is said that the risk is high. Can this be explained so that members of this council can appreciate the Section 151 officers' level of confidence that this is a well-prepared and realistic budget? If I want to add 3 words to that, I will say prudent, 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 the word beloved of a former Chancellor. Is this a realistic budget? I ask of the Section 151 officer.
Councillor Christopher, were you speaking to the amendment there? Because that's what's going on at the moment. Well, excuse me, at the moment we're dealing with the amendment, so I'll get back to you when we've looked after everybody else. Thank you. Councillor Biggs.
Thank you, and I will talk to the amendment. I have real issues with the amendment. I think it sets a bad precedent to do that. I think it's not the right approach. I absolutely agree. I'm very concerned about transformation. Section 114 councils around the country are littered with failed transformation programs. I know, and I would agree, we've got a good track record on many transformations. I think children's services, excellent. But you get into the harder areas to do, that have to go through consultation. The very fact that none of this could come out in detail, and nobody seems to know, Councillor Sutters doesn't know, it just rings so many alarm bells for me. But it's not the right way to write it off, say, well, we'll just take it from reserves. I think that's really bad practice, because we've got to set the bench high. If that's what it is, do come back and explain, because that's what the whole budget cafe should have been focusing on, not the budget, which has not changed one bit, as far as I can see, for all the hours that went on it, lots of discussion and being very informed about it. But it's this transformation is so key. I don't have confidence, and as has been said, that risk is high. And we're not going to be in a position to borrow more. It is all stated in there that you can't, we can't increase the capital programme because we can't borrow any more. We're up to the max. So it would be foolish to support the amendment, I'm afraid, but I understand the reasoning behind it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Biggs. The absence of anyone else's hand speaking to the amendment, I'm now going to ask Councillor Heatley. Councillor Took. Excuse me, Councillor Heatley, after Councillor Took.
Thank you, Chair. I only had my hand up for about 10 minutes. I've spent an awful lot of time in industry promoting transformation savings and getting stuff by doing things differently. And it's not easy. It's not easy. You've got to make some big changes. And once you've had the low-hanging fruit, which I think over the past 4 years we have had, it's a little more difficult to get some of the ones off the top branches. And I suspect that's why we don't have the detail yet on these £8 million worth of savings. I think it would be more honest to actually say, we'll take it from reserves, we will seek to do those transformation savings, and we will then use those transformation savings to fund other things possibly that the council is doing. One of the things that does need funding, for example, is our new housing strategy, because we want to build houses, we want to be a registered provider. I was told at the Eastern Area Planning Committee that this would not happen for a year because there's no resources. Now, I'm not going to go into that any further. Councillor Sumper has very kindly agreed to look into this in more detail for me. But this is the sort of thing that £8 million, if we can get the savings working, will help enormously. So we can start being a registered provider and providing affordable housing. That's the ambition of this council. And I think the honest thing to do is to say, well, at the moment we have a hole, we'll take it from reserves for the moment, and then we'll use those transformation savings to build the council up in the future. So I think I will be supporting this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Took. We have Councillor Haynes, Councillor Heatley, and concluding with Councillor Suttle on this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I shall not be voting for this amendment. This whole matter had been raised and very thoroughly discussed in scrutiny. I want to just talk a little bit about the staff side of this. So there is a national shortage of workforce for councils across the country. And we do have a turnover which is apparently running at about 12%, which equates to about 575, 600 people a year. So what we are looking to do, this is coming back to Councillor Kimber, who was very concerned about this, and one of the things we have been doing, and I have explained this at scrutiny, is we're doing a considerable amount of work to look to see how we can flex those roles so that people are able to move. Because as we go through the Our Future Council process, we will be looking at considerable changes in our processes, in our back office and the way that we do things. But we don't want to lose those good staff. What we need to be able to do, as we did in COVID, is to flex them into other roles. So I wanted to make that point clear to Councillor Kimber. I also wanted to make clear that Our Future Council programme is a 7-year programme which is looking at this change. It's not just next year and a bit the following year. It's a long-term process as we're going through. And what we have asked for here is an underwrite. It is not reserves that we're giving to, or we just put those reserves there in case. It's an underwrite, and we do this every year. Every year when we do transformation, we actually underwrite that transformation, and then the money goes back into the pot as we move through, and the transformation makes the savings. So I think there's a distinct misunderstanding about how this is. It's not using our reserves and you never get them back again. It's actually, if there's a shortfall on it as you go through the process, as the savings come in, it goes back to the pot. So if this is business as usual, and that is what we do in this council. You're saying you haven't understood what this might mean. I think one of the things we can look at, there's a classic example of what it might mean, is what we've done with the library service. Because we've had a big consultation, we've understood what people needed in their towns, we've understood how that worked, we've made savings within the service, but we still have that excellent service. That's the sort of thing that we're looking at front-facing, but we still have quite a lot of work to do back-facing, joining up computer systems, looking at how we work the processes that we do internally, and as part of that will be the savings that happen for the first year of Our Future Council. Thank you, Chairman, for allowing me to say that.
Thank you, Councillor Haynes. Right, Councillor Heatley, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to start with what Councillor Took had to say. I think there's a bit of a misapprehension that I am in some way against Our Future Council. I am not. All this amendment does is cross out the line that says it's going to save £8 million. That doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. Of course we should do it. And we may even save some money. I think it's doubtful we'll save £8 million next year. That's all. And okay, we can have different opinions about that. I feel that it is wrong, therefore, to put in the budget a line which says we're going to save £8 million when we're not reasonably sure about it. I know every year we take a bit of that gamble, but this seems to be going further than we've done before. At scrutiny, I did raise this actually at the first scrutiny committee, the People and Health one, which I'm not a member of. I didn't raise it at Councillor Bartlett's scrutiny committee because I thought I'd done it once already. Plus, if anyone remembers, I got very interested in reserves at that scrutiny committee, and that's because I wanted to check the proposition about whether it was fundable from reserves. The subsequent material about the effect on next year, to be honest, I hadn't thought about it until after that stage. Third point, funding from reserves and Councillor Biggs' points. I don't like funding from reserves either, for all sorts of good reasons, but we've had a very unhappy choice. You want to do all three things. You want it balanced properly with robust understanding of all the figures. you don't want to use reserves, and you don't want to make major cuts. Now, this year, we found ourselves in a position where at least one of those had to go. I don't think anyone in this chamber wants to make major cuts for all sorts of good reasons, and I don't think I want to have a genuinely balanced budget where it is sound finances of the kind the leader has been talking about. There's one other point about that. Councillor Lacey-Clark said, well, you know, we've made these savings in the past and so on and so forth. Please remember this is an additional set of savings. We had already established in the budget process we were going to make 18 million of savings, the ones we're confident about. This is in a different category on top of it. And so I think it's inevitable that I'm going to be a bit more sceptical about it. To sum up, if I can find the right piece of paper, maybe I can't. Look, I think this is about having a budget which is a sound one, where you can believe in all the figures. I think the way to achieve that is to say, look, we are prepared to spend reserves on avoiding cuts next year. If we make some savings through the Our Future Council process, that is a bonus. And I think also that way we are handing on a neutral offer to the next council. We're not hampering it from the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Heatley. So we now have a right to reply, which will be taken by Councillor Suttle. Thank you.
Thank you. Just when I thought things were going well. What we have here is an opinion, and I respect Brian's opinion. He believes that that's something that we should do with a budget. I'm going to have to disagree. The way that I've been setting these budgets is not about, as I've stressed, it's not necessarily just about this year and what we will do in year, but it's to try and tackle the longer term issues. Why are we all talking about this? Because one thing every single person in here agrees with me is we are underfunded. I don't care who the central government is, whoever they are, they don't give us enough money. And that is a fact. And I have been on record saying we start every year, 20 million it was, I think we're now heading off towards 30 million short of what we need. This means that every year we have to embark upon a significant strain of work throughout the council to ensure that this Dorset has a future. Dorset residents can be sure their bins will be picked up, weeds will be scraped off the roads, potholes filled in by my friend here personally, and the council will survive. This is my strategy. My strategy is to think about the future all the time. So our future council is part of that strategy. It's something that's going to work along in future years, and it starts as a 2-year programme with, as I said, maybe targets of 20 plus million, because they have to be. We've already saved 96 million going to Paul. There's no swathes of redundancies within this council associated with 96 million. None of the employees have found themselves stood outside because that's not happened. We've been trying to save the money by changing process. Maybe some of the jobs haven't been re-advertised. Maybe that's that way. But the bottom line is that prudently we've tried to ensure the longer term security. Now, if you vote for this amendment, you are stopping my process. You have decided to, I know you'll shake your head, because you will, because that's the way it is, because it will take the incentive and the ambition out of our future council work. I know that you flavoured it with, well, we can still continue to do the work, but I find work is best with an incentive. Now, when you think about it, you say, oh, we'll take reserves, and if we make the savings, all well and good, and that will help the next council. But if it doesn't work, you're always going to take the reserves. So it doesn't really matter whether you take them now or whether you take them later. You'll agree on that. So my strategy is we won't use those reserves. We will ensure that there's ambition within our future council work, and we will make those savings and more. And that means that we will protect the reserves. And that is really the ethos of the way that all of the budgets have been set, thinking about the future. Because when I first took this role, the medium-term financial plan, I opened it and thought, I need to be in a different place. I need a different role, Spencer, thank you very much. Because it's an incredible challenge. And we're lobbying all the time. What have we got this year? 3 million, almost £4 million. £4 million isn't going to save us. We need 30. We need what Leicester's got. So we need a change. Central government, whichever that is, whether you call it an algorithm, a matrix, or whatever you call it, has to change. Because in its strange way, it's almost like the post office. You think the post office could have seen all these people were in problems, couldn't you? You'd think they'd have noticed. But you'd think central government could notice that all the councils are going bust. Why is that? Can't understand it. It's because they've not got enough money and the distribution is wrong. And that's what makes me angry about the budget when I'm setting these budgets, because we have to make 9p spend 10p, and it's a freaking struggle, as everybody knows. So far, so good. That's why I don't want to stop our future council work. That's why I don't want to take the £8 million, because I feel that it's like an incentive. We're on a roll. It all goes forward. And I very much appreciate what you've said, and I think it's always good to have challenge, and I thank you for that challenge, but I don't agree. Trust me.
Thank you for that. We will now go to the vote. On the amendment. Thank you.
Councillors, the vote is now open. Thank you, councillors. The results of the vote are in favour of the amendment 22, against 44 and 1 abstention. The amendment is therefore lost.
Thank you, Susan. So we will now go right back to the original proposal for the budget strategy from Councillor Gary Suttle, which was duly seconded by Councillor Spencer Flower. And I'll invite you to put your hands up for that. First up, we have Councillor Kimber.
Councillor Paul Kimber, Portland. Fellow councillors, I put you forward my concerns on this budget. As a member of the Labour Party, or I was nearly a group tonight, but not quite, about that we are setting our employees, and I mean the ordinary people, waiting to see what this council does and how we fix and set and how much money we have to pay, and not only that, what services we get. And I'm always very, very concerned about the services. I'm tired of, I really say to ordinary people, and this is what worries me, is the amount that will be paid. All those of our residents that are on universal credit, again, please contact the council for advice. For those ordinary people, and I think we called them at the last election, those that's just managing, I understand this council, the finance sector, has made a video. And I would urge this council to promote that video in every area and every corner, so people can get an understanding of what they are entitled to and what they will have to pay, and do they need to ask for help. I know in my area, Portland, this is a constant question: how am I going to manage? And I do urge those people to come forward to this council and try and get that council tax support. I want to thank, as I do every year, our council officers, and I'm going to say from the chief executive to the cleaners. Without their hard work, diligence, that we would be, and the people of Dorset would be a lot worse off. I want us to now start talking, and we've talked through tonight about the RSG, the Rate Support Grant. I've never known Dorset to be out of towards the last quartile or the last section of it, and I believe, and please correct me if I'm wrong, we probably get 700,000 RSG. But our near colleagues in Bournemouth are getting 4.2 million. Our colleagues in Somerset, the north of us, are getting 8.5 RSG. Is that fair? No, thank you. Dorset Council taxpayers need an explanation. We've talked about Leicester. Maybe I should defect to Leicester and maybe, yeah. But remember, we have an urgent need for social housing, and I would also like to tag on council housing, because I won't let that go. And I believe we nearly had it in our strategy but last time, but we need, and I still say we need to promote that. But coming back to the RSG, my last point is Westminster Council, and this is this year, because I don't know what they've set their council tax at, that a band 3 pays £810.71 for a band 3, whereas us in Dorset would be around about £2,145.28. Again, is that fair? No. And yet, why? It makes you might think that we ought to move up to Westminster. Maybe we can have a. That's right. I can see the bright lights. But coming back to the serious areas, what has always amazed me, thank you, what has always amazed me is our volunteer and voluntary groups throughout the county. Without them, I think our council tax would be a lot higher. I know I went last night to a food bank meeting and saw the difficulties there. I know we are dealing with warm spaces, housing. This week we had...
Excuse me, Councillor Kember, could we just stick to the actual business of the budget? I understand your sentiments, sir, and we would all agree with them. I personally would. But I would like you to stick to the budget, please.
I'd like to see a recorded vote tonight. Thank you.
It is a legal requirement, Councillor Kember. There will definitely be one. Thank you. Councillor Roberts.
Councillor Mark Roberts, Chesil Bank, from where we overlook Portland. It's usually shrouded in mist, and I'm not sure why that is. I'd like to comment on this budget before us tonight, and I think it would be salutary for all members here to reflect on the financial issues facing most of our neighbouring authorities. Hampshire, 130 million in the red. Southampton City Council, 100 million. BCP, at least 40. And our northern neighbour, Somerset Council, now a unitary, going through transformation like we did, 100 million in the red. Their reserves have dropped from over 200 million to 70 million in the last year. The leader, Bill Reeves, is on public record as stating that they will have to make the following cuts to services: closing a sports centre in Yeovil, closing 5 recycling centres, closing the CCTV control centre, and indeed that's something that BCP leader Vicky Slade has mooted, much to the horror of the Police and Crime Commissioner for Public Safety. They're closing 25 public toilets, stopping lifeguards at some beaches, ceasing school crossing patrols, cutting back on highway maintenance, and we've heard how bad it is as you cross the border. Their leader wanted to raise council tax by 10%, but Her Majesty's government have told him no unless approved by a local referendum. Despite, as we've heard, the RSG of 8.5 million, Dorset is fiscally secure and not cutting any services. We've heard very little praise for the work the teams have put into this. And the leader has mentioned that we are the #1 upper tier authority for recycling in the country. I would just like to remind you all, we are a blue member-led authority, which is the greenest in England. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Roberts. Councillor Canning.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I just want a question more than anything else for Councillor Suttle. You asked us to trust you, and I'm going to do that now. Could you provide an assurance that the Shire Hall Museum in Dorchester is not about to lose its entire grant from this council because of these cuts that don't exist?
Somebody going to respond to that?
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Beddoe.
You were. Thank you. Yeah, that's not really part of the budget debate. I'm happy to have a conversation. I've met with Shire Hall, as I've met with all our museums, and I do on a regular basis. I should have said, sorry, Laura Beddoe, I'm the Cabinet Member for Culture and Communities. Very, very happy to have that meeting, but I don't think it's really appropriate to comment on individual organisations in the budget speech. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beddoe. I will now ask Councillor Lacey Clark. Thank you.
Chairman, I didn't mean to signal to speak. I apologise, I did. I'm fine.
Smashing, thank you. Councillor David Gray.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor David Gray, Raleigh, Polly and Weymouth. Should we talk about the budget for a change? Yeah. Okay. I'm sure that, thank you for the opportunity to talk about this. It's my last chance to do this. I've been with this budget proposal from the start. So back in November, I've been through all the cafes, scrutiny, and on to tonight. There are some elements of this budget that are to be admired. Somebody mentioned praise. Children's services, although it's getting 9%, I think they've demonstrated a good deal of financial and strategic innovation. Adults and housing, again, 5%, but again, demonstrating that we can change the way we do things and still hold the internal inflation. There's some good work that's gone on. I think libraries has already been mentioned. Both have demonstrated that we can reorganise. And I think all those should be commended for what we've done. But I can't vote for this budget for the following reasons. In one of the meetings, Aidan Dunn quoted, Police Directorate and Corporate Development have not kept up with the level of innovation or reorganisation required by a modern council. And this is where I'm going with what we haven't done in the last 5 years. I listened to Jill, I listened to Laura about the reorganisation, but these are the departments that we should have attacked first and needed to reorganise. So in corporate development, we heard, that includes HR, by the way. We heard in 2019 that we had 4,800 employees. In 2023, we have 4,800 employees. Now, they might be doing different jobs, accept that, but this council needs to be smaller. I think I'm probably the only person saying this, but 8 million, 12 million, whatever, if you look at the medium-term financial plan, the end of the next council, you will be £50 million adrift. So we need to do something more radical than, after 4.5 years, doing a one-council review. I think the other thing that corporate controls is the structural issues that we've got in the council. And I've been banging on for 4 years and pretty much got nowhere. Part of an executive director's job is to review structures for the future. And my accusation is they failed to do that sufficiently that we're ready for the next iteration of this council. However, the bigger department, Place Directorate. Now, Place Directorate accounts for 46% of the employees that we have in the council, 2,300. If I'm going to disagree with my colleagues in the chamber, I accept that. They're asking for a 27% increase, but even when you take out Dorset Travel, which somebody will bring up for the umpteenth time, it's still 13%. So 13% increase. This is the department that asked for capital to put new parking machines in and then dropped the revenue that were received by 3.5 million. Financially, a ridiculous process in my view. I think Place, really, we need to get rid of the silos in Place. That's what's holding the decision-making back. We micromanage in Place to the nth degree. You can't get a decision sometimes unless you go all the way to the top. And it's not really transformation they need. We need to look at every service and say, can we afford to do that? It's a big service, takes up nearly 100 million. And my final reason, thank you, Chair, for giving me the opportunity for three. The final reason is I didn't speak on the amendment from Councillor Heatley because I really object to this budget, not based on the fact that we're going to move 8 million from reserves or underwrite it. I sort of agree with the Lone Ranger over there that the incentive to save the 8 million is there. What I really object to is the fact, and I will quote verbatim, this is from the budget strategy of this council. This is the budget strategy. The first point in the budget strategy says, we will not use reserves in budget strategy. 21.6 million we've used in 4 years. The words that the leader didn't say about not using reserves is that we move it from general reserve to another reserve to underpin it. And yes, that's a good financial way of doing it. But let's not claim one thing and do another. You know, we do use reserves, and at times, Brian is right, we should fess up to that and use them if it's appropriate and fiscally responsible. So the 8.1 million from reserves, I don't really have a problem with. I just want us to stop claiming that we don't. If you look at the 5 themes that's been talked about, structures mentioned, commissioning, delivery. Commissioning, we've got 2 departments that know how to do that, children's services and adult. We should be using their knowledge in other ways to reduce the cost of this council. Service redesign, I haven't even spoke about asset management, but that is a complete mess in my view. We haven't used our assets wisely in the last 4 years. We could have done a lot more. So summing up, Chair, what I would say is I'm in support of one council savings, but you're just not quick enough. Nowhere near. 4.5 years, and this is what we've come to. It's a disgrace. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. I'm going to ask Councillor O'Leary, who's on the list. No, I'm getting a shake. Okay, fine. So may I move, do you think, direct to the leader for his secondary speech, his speech seconding the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Well, you'll be pleased to know that I've crossed out quite a lot of what I was going to say because it's already been said, a lot of it during the amendment debate, but there you go. Well, first of all, can I congratulate Gary Suttle and the other members of the Cabinet, as well as Senior Officer Aidan Dunn, Sean Creamer, and the team in finance, along with other service directors, and all those involved for the excellent work that's been carried out in the preparation of the 24-25 budget that we have before us this evening. This is without doubt, Chairman, a well-presented budget, a budget that takes full account of the digital service demand pressures, and that's been mentioned more than once. A soundly based budget which has enabled members of this Council to get a good understanding of the challenges and opportunities we will face in the coming months and years. Can I echo the remarks made by Gary Suttle regarding the key role of the 2 cross-party budget cafes and the 2 scrutiny committees have played again this year, what has been a very challenging process, ensuring we are once again able to achieve a balanced budget without the need for reductions in service with the combined council tax and social care precept just below the 5% referendum level. At the January Cabinet meeting, Gary Suttle was able to announce that far from being out of control in the in-year overspend, has been reduced down to 3.5 million, which is around 1% of the budget of the current year, with the prospect of breaking even by the end of the 4th quarter. This improvement is an excellent achievement, adding to the confidence members can have in the budget before us this evening. The situation we're in doing is not by accident or by good fortune, in contrast with neighbouring councils and across the country who are announcing severe cuts with increases in council tax and depleting reserves. One of the members from Weymouth remarked recently, I'm going to use it again, Brian, relied upon the intervention and influence of the Lone Ranger. Well, I'm old enough to remember this character. It was on a weekly Western TV series. From what I can recall, though, the Lone Ranger was a force for good, and maybe his comments were well-founded. Gary so eloquently set out the assumptions on which the budget has been based, so I'll not dwell on that further. However, we must do the right thing. We must look after those who need our help. The young people in care and those with age-related health mobility issues continue to need our support so they can cope. Without the ongoing benefits of transformation and increases of council tax, we would be forced with the prospect of reductions in discretionary services to balance our budgets. Thankfully, we continue to avoid such a situation. So, Chairman, I conclude by confirming my full support for this budget, as per the recommendations set out in the report. This will be a budget that will enable Council to offer the best outcomes overall for the communities we serve, helping to establish a basis on which to take this Council forward in a strong, financially sound and structured way, enabling us to fulfil our ambitions to serve the community of Dorset well through transformation of council structures and investment in our frontline services. This fits well with a promise made to the people of Dorset when the local government reorganisation was first proposed and subsequently approved by government. Yes, we remain bold and ambitious, and this is demonstrated by the second phase of transformation with the launching of our Future Council initiative back in November, which will review structures and processes during the next 2 to 3 years, aiming to maintain strong structures, stable finances that Dorset Council is renowned. This is the bedrock for being able to achieve our key priorities as set out in the Dorset Plan and the Cabinet commitments. In other words, doing the boring bits well in a cost-effective way will always pay dividends. There are many reasons to vote in favour of this budget this evening, members, and in my view, none to vote against. To vote against this budget will be a slap in the face to the people of Dorset, because the alternatives will be service cuts. And I certainly wasn't elected to support service cuts, and I'm assuming nobody in this chamber was either. In the financial desert that local government currently is, Chairman, Dorset remains an oasis of stability, confidence, hope and ambition. This is surely the foundation on which we can build for the present and the future for Dorset Council and the people of Dorset that we serve. Support this budget this evening, colleagues, and show the people of Dorset you're on their side. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Flower. I'm beginning to feel like Tonto, and we're going to go straight to the vote now. Thank you.
Yeah, the vote is now open. Councillor Williams, would you mind pressing the button again for us? Thank you. Thank you. The vote is now closed. The results of the vote are 51 in favour, 16 against. The recommendations are therefore carried.
Thank you very much. Agenda item 10 is the pay policy statement, and I will invite senior management to leave the chamber. Thank you. This is a marathon, isn't it? People rambling. Huh?
You're okay to.
Yeah? Or do you think I should sum up a state? I'm hoping we can crack on.
You need it to have a 10-minute.
I would. But I don't want to.
Hesitation.
Whoops. No, I would. Absolutely. What do you think? Anybody? Do you think? Okay. It has been put to me that it's an ideal time to take a 10-minute break. Thank you. Thank you very much, councillors. I will now ask, excuse me, we are on to agenda item 10, the pay policy statement. I will now invite Councillor Jill Haynes to introduce the report. Thank you.
There we go. Thank you very much, Chairman. It is a requirement of the Localism Act 2011 that the Council sets out the pay policy statement for the following financial year. The statement should set out the policies on remuneration of their chief officers and the relationship between them and other officers. In this paper, you will see at 9.6 in Appendix 1 that the gap continues to close in pay between those two categories. National pay bargaining brought in last year a pay increase to the lowest paid of 9.6%, against 3.5% for the highest earner. This reduced our pay difference on full-time equivalent salaries to 5.96 to 1, and in recent years it has been high as 7 to 1. The recommendations before you tonight are to note the provisions of the Localism Act and the content of the pay policy statement for 24-25 financial year, and to approve the pay policy statement for the same period, and I propose their adoption. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Haynes. Councillor Flower.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm pleased to second the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody got anything they'd like to say about this? Or can we go straight to the vote? I can't see anybody's hand up. So we will please go to the vote. The recommendations are to note the provisions of the Localism Act and content of the pay policy statement for the 2024-25 financial year, and approve the pay policy statement for 2024-25. Thank you.
The vote is now open. Councillor Lugg, would you mind voting for us again, please? Thank you. The vote is now closed, and the results of the vote are 58 in favour, 1 against and 1 abstention. The recommendations are therefore carried.
Thank you, Susan. We will move smartly on to agenda item 11, notice of motion, and I will ask Councillor Ireland to introduce it. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, could somebody let the officers back in, please?
Do that then.
I wrote it large on here and didn't read it out. Okay. 51, no, 58 to 1. God, what's the matter with them? I told them we were starting just now. I did give them a shout before we continued the meeting. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Ireland, would you please introduce your notice of motion? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Councillor Nicky Ireland Crossways. So I'm not going to repeat the narrative or read out the motion unless the Chairman wishes me to, because I trust you've all read it. I am going to say something which I hope you support it if you're not going to already. So what the motion doesn't say is that research from the End Child Poverty Coalition shows that over 1.5 million children across the whole of the UK are affected by the two-child limit on benefit payments. So that's roughly 1 in 10 children in this country. And the two-child limit costs families up to about £3,200 per year per child. There is a direct correlation between the cap and child poverty. According to analysis by the TUC, the highest proportion of low-income workers affected are in the southwest of England, where more than 4 in 10 universal credit claimants have a low-paid job that qualifies them for benefits, a larger percentage than any other region. Focusing in on our own county of Dorset, the numbers vary by constituency, but the worst, unsurprisingly, is South Dorset, where just under 30% of children are classed as living in poverty. Zooming further in 2019, a report by the same people showed that 30% of under-16s in Weymouth and Portland were living in poverty, rising to some 40% in Malcolm Regis, Councillor Royal's ward, Weymouth East and Underhill, compared to an average of 26% in the whole South West region. Overall, of the 5,266 children in South Dorset said to be affected, 4,050 were from Weymouth and Portland. So why is that? The Social Mobility Commission's State of the Nation report back in 2017 stated that in Weymouth and Portland, more than 4 in 10 people earn less than the voluntary living wage, the highest levels in the country and much higher than the national average of 1 in 4. We are now in 2024 and this hasn't improved. Family poverty has specific consequences for children. The reality is that growing up in poverty blights children's lives. It means being cold and being hungry. And the Royal College of Paediatrics and Child Health state that there is a close correlation between deprivation and excess weight and obesity. When families cannot provide a healthy diet, the likelihood of unhealthy weight gain amongst children rises rapidly, leaving such children at risk from cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, joint problems and breathing difficulties such as asthma. And if this isn't enough, childhood obesity is likely to continue into adulthood and is associated with a higher chance of premature death and disability. So the lesson here is simple. Child poverty can kill, and in Dorset it does. So I hope you can please support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ireland. Councillor Jones?
Can I speak at the end of the debate, please?
Yes, but you will need to say that you second the motion. Would you like to make that statement, please?
I'm seconding the motion, but I'd like to speak at the end of the debate.
Thank you. Excuse me being pedantic, but we've got to keep it legal. Okay. Councillor O'Leary.
Obviously, the Leader of the Opposition bringing a motion on a policy 7 years in place at the last likely meeting before an election isn't for political reasons and instead brought forward to benefit the lowest earning in society. So therefore, I'd like to amend this motion and make it a little bit more radical. Low-income families have been hit hard by inflation and a cost of living crisis. Low-paid workers often face the brunt of this via our unfair and regressive taxation system. Therefore, this council calls on the government to raise the basic rate of income tax threshold from £12,571 to £20,000, taking millions of the lowest paid working people in this country out of tax altogether, especially as inflation has pushed more and more people into the income tax threshold. This would help push growth in the economy and make work pay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Leary. Do you have a seconder for that, please?
Andrew Kirby.
Sorry. Thank you. Councillor Kirby, would you like to speak now? Thank you. So those wishing to speak to the amendment of Councillor O'Leary's, I hope he's got it written down because I think Susan will need it on the screen. Okay, thank you. Sorry, Councillor Sutton. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to be able to say this with anything like the eloquence that my own financial expert colleague Brian would do, but I think this is absolute nonsense, actually. Everybody loves to say, oh, raise the rate of tax. But what that does is puts the same amount of money in the pocket of someone who's earning 20 grand and someone who's earning 100 grand. So it's a terrible use of public money. That is not the way to improve income for lower families because, as I said, it wastes so much money. That is just simply not the way to do it. It's absolute rubbish. Sorry.
Councillor Paul Kimmer, I'll be very brief, Chair. Yeah, I totally agree. It's a nonsense. But if Councillor O'Leary did tag on non-DOMs onto it, then I'd be very, very happy to support it. But unfortunately, he hasn't mentioned people that come in and ride the tax system. So I shan't be supporting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kimber. Councillor Took.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor David Took, Holt and Cranbourne.
Yeah, it's on.
It's on. Hello? Thank you. I'm not normally accused of speaking gently. However, Councillor O'Leary's motion is interesting and lifting the limits on taxation is a good way to put more money in the pockets of less advantaged people. I'm not sure what he said is an amendment to this motion. It strikes me that it is a new motion because Councillor Ireland's motion doesn't mention income tax or the rate of income tax or anything. So it's a very interesting proposal, Councillor O'Leary, but surely it's not an amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Took. We're in discussion. Councillor Ireland, point of order.
Yeah, I'm not going to stand up. Point of order. So we had this in Shadow Council, if I remember. I think Councillor Batstone might have been chairing, if she remembers. And maybe it wasn't Councillor Batstone. But anyway, item 17.6, amendments to motions. So you can do things like leave out words and add words, as long as the effect of the amendment is not to negate the motion. But the crucial one is the amendment to a motion must be relevant to the motion. So making a point that it's just generally going to change people's finances is not at all related to what I've suggested, which is calling on this council to write to the government and to scrap the two-child benefit cap. I don't see how Councillor Leary's motion has any relevance to that at all. So.
Thank you, Councillor Ireland. Jonathan. We'd like to take a few minutes, please, to compare the two side by side. So you can talk amongst yourself till I bang my gavel again. Right. I have been advised that actually I should overrule the amendment as it's not substantially related to the original motion. It doesn't mention children, at least, as well. So I'm going to, excuse me, so I'm going to take the advice, and with apologies, Councillor O'Leary, I'm going to ignore that, and Councillor Kirby as well. So we're going to go back to the original motion. I had Councillor Orrell to speak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. John Orrell of Melcombe Regis. I'm in favour of this motion. What we've seen over the last decade or so is our children are getting smaller across the nation. It's a sign of malnourishment. People cannot afford to feed their children. And when they can afford to feed their children, it's with high carbohydrate foods, pizzas and pastas, which doesn't give them essential nutrients. So we're also seeing the number of cases of iron deficiency anemia doubling in the last 10 years, causing admissions for children to have iron transfusions in hospital for stuff they should be eating as food. Cases of B12 deficiency, of folate deficiency have tripled. This is extraordinary in a rich, advanced nation that our children are malnourished. It just shouldn't be this way. So very much, and diseases that should have been wiped out in the 19th century, scurvy and rickets, are coming back. We should hang our heads in shame. And so this amendment is very timely because the very poorest family are hit it hardest. And we actually need these children. Children aren't a burden, they're an investment. And some of these children need to be, because they'll be our future care workers, our people that work for the council, people that work in care homes. So we shouldn't penalise poor families. We should support them and encourage them, and we should feed our children. Thank you.
Excuse me, Councillor Orrell. The amendment has been withdrawn. I'm not. When you said you'd agreed with the amendment, could you just clarify that, please?
No, I apologise. I mean the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Lacey-Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Knock Lacey-Clark from Blandford Forum Ward. I completely agree with this. I myself was a child that grew up with school meals. That was the way I got fed, and actually one of the main meals I had in the day, I know you don't believe it now, but was actually that school meal. It was really important. Breakfast clubs, the like, excellent. I'm also aware that, yes, our children are on average getting shorter, and I think that I'm not sure it's smaller, there's a whole range of reasons behind that. My one worry is the actual implications for this is, if we do just radically change this, where does the money come from? What is the cause? What knock-on effect will this have to everything else? Should we do it? Yes, absolutely agree. But have we looked at the implications of it and actually what that means to the government as a whole? How actually, what would pay for it? If we're going to give them a request, we have to give them part of that solution as well. There's not just magic money. And as a side thing, it's great if some of our kids grow up to be carers, but it's also great if some of our kids grow up to be Elon Musk or something. Let's mix up what our kids can grow up to be in the future. We just keep hearing carers again. There's loads of jobs out there, and I think our kids could be leaders of the future. Let's really empower them with that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Lacey-Clark. Councillor O'Leary.
Chairman, the reason I attempted to amend this motion, number one, we aren't the decision-making body on this matter. All it is lobbying, is because, in my opinion, it doesn't reach the people that do need it as well. It doesn't reach help families with 2 children that are struggling or 1 family that are struggling. It doesn't help the 62-year-old bus driver who lives by himself, who isn't entitled to child benefit because he no longer has any children, lives at home. There are plenty of people on low incomes that are in desperate need of help through tax relief and through other incentives in ways that will not be helped by this motion. That is why you said I didn't use the word child or children, because just because you don't have children doesn't mean you're not poor or you aren't deprived or you're not in need of stuff. Like Councillor Lacey-Clark, I grew up in a deprived, what would be described as a deprived family. We didn't think we were deprived. The government didn't come around telling us every 5 minutes we were. And I know exactly what it's like, and I live in an area and I represent an area that struggles with that. So, but like I said, what concerns me is this motion doesn't cover as many people as it could with a different form of help.
Thank you, Councillor O'Leary. Councillor Jones.
Jones, Sturminster Newton. I will support this motion if I just wish it would go somewhere because frankly, I mean, it's a wish, but will it go anywhere? Probably not. But you know, sometimes it's not just about food. 2 weeks ago, we had a mum and children in. The children hadn't cleaned their teeth for days. And why? Because they didn't have the money for a toothbrush, for goodness sake. So last week we spent nearly £300 on toothbrushes for over 430 children and toothpaste. It's so much more than food. Food, absolutely, yes, but dental care, they don't get to see a dentist. It's so much bigger than this, and perhaps as a council, and we do our best, my goodness me, we've had, you know, certainly in the Vale Pantry, we've had some great grants that have helped us, but it'll never be enough. It'll never be enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Mark Roberts, Chesilbank Ward. I think I would have had to declare an interest in this a few years ago as I have 5 children. And I'm one of 5, and I know my mother would have been extremely grateful for this cap to have been removed. I'm minded to support it, but I echo Councillor Jones' fear that it won't really actually go anywhere. But I think it's a very valuable motion, and I'm minded to support it.
Thank you. Councillor Took.
Thank you, Chairman. David Took from Cranbourne and Alderholt. Where will the money come from? There are an awful lot of places the money can come from in government. Government has wasted huge amounts on PPE, on the insane Rwanda plan and other things. The government can find this money. If it can find hundreds and hundreds of millions, billions of pounds for PPE fraud, then it can find the money for this. It's not perfect. And I think Councillor O'Leary is quite right. There are other things that could be done. And his proposal to lift the income tax threshold, I think is a good plan. If he wants to put that forward as a motion, I might be minded to support it once I see the detail. But we're talking about this amendment. And because it's not perfect doesn't mean we should throw it out. Because there are other things that could be done as well doesn't mean we should not do this. So I think we should pass this motion and hopefully people will listen. And I take the point very strongly about people in government perhaps not being interested in what their councils tell them. I rather think they should be. So I'll be supporting this motion and I hope that the rest of the chamber will see fit to do so as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Took. Councillor Kimber.
Thank you, Chair, fellow councillors, and I will also be supporting this motion, and I actually welcome it. I just wanted to say something about in Portland. The Portland Town Council, after the 2019 elections, revealed several social deprivations in Portland. The Town Council introduced a successful food voucher scheme for the children for free school meals during their holidays. This is what one little town council was able to do. And I say to councillors tonight, we have to represent all the people in our beautiful county. And yes, let's be bold and go for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kimber. Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Cook, Shaftesbury Town. I think there is a general feeling within the chamber tonight to support this motion. And for anybody who's wavering, sitting on the fence, we've got to remember that, yes, there aren't all the people that we would like to help, but it will help some people. And it will help some people a massive amount if government listen, take it on board, and get their act together and do something for people who are in genuine need. We've heard this evening in our budget discussions about setting a bar, making a commitment, and trying to and knowing that we will achieve it. And I hope for all our for the future council that those things happen. If we can get government to think the same way and actually make a difference to people's lives, and then once they realise they can, maybe they can take on board Councillor O'Leary's suggestion of raising income tax thresholds, because if that momentum starts to grow, we can start doing good for a lot more people than we are at the moment. So I shall be supporting this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. Councillor Weller.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I think I'm repeating other people now, so I'll simply say, just because we can't help everyone doesn't mean we shouldn't help those that we can. So for that reason, I will be supporting it. As far as money is concerned, we could always ask Mr Sunak to give us a little bit.
Thank you, Councillor Weller. Councillor Beddoe.
Thank you. I just think we're in danger of having a very fulsome debate about something that we don't have decision-making powers over. I've been very close to the cost of living work that Dorset Council has done alongside our voluntary sector. There are some absolutely brilliant pieces of work. Is it enough? Is it ever enough? Councillor Jones's point. But it is a work stream that we have influence over, that we can, to an extent, along with our partners, control. And I, happy to work on that and debate that all the livelong day. But this is an expression of our opinion as a council to central government over a policy that we have no control over. So I just think we're in danger of, there's loads of stuff that I disagree with, all sorts of companies or governments or, whatever. And we could all bring a motion about any of those things and say we'd like to express an opinion on this or that. Is it a valuable use of this council's time to express our personal or collective opinions about different government policies? I'm not sure it is. Having said that, I didn't agree with this cap when it was brought in, so I will support the motion. But I just think we need to be a little bit careful about using our time to express our opinions over a process that we have no control over. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beddoe. Councillor Bartlett.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I've always worked on the premise that if you don't ask, you don't get. And I think that while this isn't our decision making, it's for central government to make a decision around this. I agree with Councillor Orrell that the children are our future. We need to be safeguarding their futures. And it's an absolute travesty that we've got children in this country that are in this poverty trap. So I am going to be supporting this. As I say, I think that across the chamber, I think we should be supporting it. We're not going to lose anything. All we're asking government is to think this up. And this will be a conversation that will be going on in councils up and down the country. They'll all be having this conversation. And the more people that shout about it, the greater the chances of getting something changed. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bartlett. Councillor Sutton.
Thank you, Chair. I couldn't support the sentiment of this motion more wholeheartedly than I do. Really, I think we all feel passionate about this. However, I do also agree with Laura, but I suggest that we move to the vote because I think that anyone in this chamber with a heart, anyone with a heart in this chamber is going to vote for it. So let's get on with it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Sutton. I have 4 people to speak, plus Councillor Jones's seconding response. So it's entirely up to you. I don't want to be accused of not allowing everyone to have their say. So perhaps we...
Well, Councillor Jones needs to get to respond.
Excuse me, please. Councillor Christopher, it's your turn. Would you rather duck it or...
Councillor Simon Christopher, Marshall Vale Ward. I just want to make a point. Councillor Louis O'Leary made the point about increasing tax allowances, and there seems to be a little bit of divergence of opinion with the...
Excuse me, Councillor Christopher. Sorry, Christopher, could you please stick to the point? Councillor Sattle, did you want to still speak?
Yeah, I'll be very quick. I'd just like to make a presumption that I'm going to speak on behalf of everybody who hasn't spoken, and we'd like to go to a vote. If you think differently, by all means, stick your hand up and say something. You would, wouldn't you, David?
Councillor Taylor then, quickly. Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Rennie.
I wasn't going to speak tonight, but what concerns me is the fact that we're being told we're expressing our opinion and it's like wasting our time. We have people sitting there listening to what all of us are saying. How many times have we heard our leader say how often he meets with people in government, our MPs, and can take that message forward? If we can't change opinion by talking to people, there's no point in any of us being ever here. And I hope, if nothing else, the people sitting there representing the Cabinet, when they go and meet with ministers elsewhere, take this wealth of, this strength from the debate, the discussion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rennie. Right. Over to you, Councillor Jones, and then we will vote.
Yeah, I'm very pleased to hear most people are going to support this motion, because scrapping the two-child limit is the most cost-effective way of dealing with the poverty in this country. And I'm pleased, that we're all in support of that. Forcing families into poverty, costing government millions and millions of pounds in helping them, and it's also costing this council millions, not millions, but thousands of pounds, supporting the children who are coming from poverty. And we do, as a council, I think we're very proud of our policy of putting families and children first in all our things. And I think we have to think, let's put families and children first, but let's put all children first. Let's support this motion for all our children.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Susan, we would like to go to the vote, please.
The vote is now open. Councillor Penfold, would you mind voting for us again, please? Thank you. Yeah, thank you. The vote is now closed. The results of the vote are 57 in favour, 2 against and 5 abstentions. The motion is therefore carried.
Thank you very much. Before I move on to agenda item 12, I'm just going to point out that there is no items 13 and 14, urgent items or exempt business. So the next item will be the end of the evening. So we have several councillors leaving the chamber because they declared a pecuniary interest. And I'd like to give them time to pack up and leave. And they may not want to return to the chamber, which is what I'm saying. Oh, right. Okay, my lovely. Thank you. Oh. Of course she has. She's a girly. Right. Thank you very much. So we will move on to agenda. Hello? Thank you. We will move on to agenda item 12, council tax premiums on second homes and empty properties. And I will ask Councillor Haynes to introduce the report and propose the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't think I've ever been quite this busy at a full council before. What happened? Councillors, I'm pleased to bring before you tonight a paper in respect of council tax premiums. It is important to distinguish that there are two different premiums within the paper. We have previously progressed as far as Cabinet regarding the possibility of council tax premiums, but at the time we were awaiting the enactment of the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill. This has now become the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act, enabling us now to make a decision. This paper sets out the recommendation that Dorset Council, from the 1st of April 2025, applies 100% council tax premium to all dwellings occupied periodically, in other words, second homes. This paper also recommends that Dorset Council amend the current premium policy applicable to properties that are unoccupied and empty, meaning substantially unfurnished, making one change that this change is that the premium charge would commence after 1 year rather than current 2 years. The paper before you this evening has provided you with draft exceptions to the premiums. Nationally, all councils are waiting on the supporting regulations to the Act that provide the final detail. The draft exceptions are based on clear expectation following a national consultation, but they remain in draft form. As an authority, we will be required to adopt any exceptions laid out in any final legislation if we adopt the premiums tonight. I would also like to draw your attention to page 244, section 7.1, within the supporting draft policy document. The initial paper that you've seen, so you're seeing the second supplement has come out. The initial paper has been amended with just one single word. And the wording read that any amount of the premium received will be part of the council's collection fund and will be shared between the council and this is the new word, all precepting authorities in line with their share of council tax. So that means town and parish councils, fire, police, etc. The paper also asks that consideration be given by any future council to a percentage of the income being used to support affordable housing projects in the future, if that council has a balanced budget. I feel very strongly that it is a privilege to live in Dorset and feel that those who can afford to have a second home here should pay for that privilege. It is also reasonable that homes do not sit empty. We have such a shortage of housing. The details are in the recommendations before you, and I propose their approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haynes. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Councillor Mark Roberts, Chesil Bank Ward, which probably contains as many second homes in the coastal villages as any ward in Dorset Council. I'm pleased to second this recommendation with its three elements and note that it would be better to leave any amendment to C to a future administration, as this recommendation will not take effect until 2025. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Roberts. We have Councillor Legg. Councillor Howard Legg. We're going to swiftly move on then to Councillor Ireland. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. With apologies to the other members in this council, I'm going to propose an amendment. Some of you know about it already. I hope we can work through it really quickly. I have provided the details to Susan Dellison in advance, if that would help. And I propose to just give my preamble now and sit down, if that's okay. So, Councillor Jill Taylor, who unfortunately can't be here tonight, and I have both been working on this amendment for some time and have both sought and obtained useful feedback from senior officers of this council, which has altered the draft appropriately to their satisfaction. It is being brought forward now so that it can be part of the budget planning and process for next year, and it can, of course, be reversed at the budget meeting in February 2025 if the council so desires. In Michael Gove's own words, the purpose of the legislation which has brought this before us is to, and I quote, bring back life to communities and, quote, benefit people in beauty spots and tourist hotspots where second home and holiday ownership has seen the availability and price of houses rise beyond their means. And a lot of us here have holiday homes, lots of holiday homes in our wards. He's also mentioned in relation to this scourge of empty properties and the intention to prevent desperate families being pushed out of their hometowns. In Dorset Council's own papers, there is acknowledgement of this impact that second and empty homes can have on some communities. Whilst I wholeheartedly support the recommendation to take advantage of the new powers provided under the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill, I don't for a minute think this will have any meaningful impact on the availability of genuine affordable housing for our residents, or those key workers who we desperately need who can't afford to move to Dorset. Bottom line is, if you can afford to drop £500,000 or more on a second home in Dorset, having to pay an extra 2 to 3k isn't going to make any difference at all. The increased availability of affordable housing will be as near to nothing as makes no odds, to quote Douglas Adams. What will, however, make a difference is if 40% of the around 10 million additional income this council will receive is used to focus these funds on an area where it will make a difference to the availability of affordable housing rather than using all of it to plug another budget gap. And I therefore proposing the following amendment, which is on the screens. It is what you say it says on the tin. Dorset does move away from being dominated by seasonal variations, low-paid employment, the exodus of our youth, and high housing costs. Back in 2019, just before it ceased to exist, Weymouth and Portland Borough Council observed, and I quote, "Younger people are moving out of the area because of the affordability gap between house prices and wages, with over 57% of young working households unable to afford a property at the lower end of the market." This amendment isn't on its own going to resolve these issues, I don't make any bones about that, but it will make a small but significant difference in what we, Dorset Council, can do to address the housing requirements of those most in need. Councillor Ryan Hope will second this amendment, and I'm happy to answer any questions or address the specifics through the Chairman with her permission.
Thank you, Councillor Ireland. Councillor Hope.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. To clarify, I am happy to second the amendment, and I reserve the right to speak to the end of the debate.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hope. First up, speaking to the amendment is Councillor O'Leary.
Oh, there we go. I just have a question for the Leader of the Opposition. Just to clarify, you're proposing that 40% of the revenues from this new tax will go into building new affordable housing. Can you just clarify if you mean it will go to housing associations or in terms of that provision or in terms of council-built, council-owned housing? Because I am very tempted to support this amendment if it is the latter as opposed to the former. I think so.
Sorry, over to you, Nick. Sorry.
It doesn't specifically say we're going to build council houses. If I've got anything to do with it later in this year, we will. But the details are on the amendment. I can't change that now. That's what's up there. It's for our housing team, and we've consulted with the housing team. They think this is great. It's going to give them a lot more money. People like Paul Derrian can do a lot more work, good work, with what we're proposing tonight. So.
Thank you for the clarification. Are you happy with that, Councillor O'Leary? Councillor David Taylor, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Taylor. I'm going to ask Jonathan for a response to that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm afraid we couldn't alter the law to achieve that. And I think, again, at the moment, we're also speaking to the amendment.
Councillor Sutton, speaking to the amendment, please.
Quickly, I thought Councillor O'Leary made an extremely good point there. So I guess this is a two-stage process, really. You know, we vote for this, and then we make sure that all those of us. Yeah, well, it just sounds great to me, doesn't it? You know, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Sutton. Councillor Kimber, fairly briefly, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and speak briefly. This amendment gets right to the heart of this council and the position as we as councillors all face when we get that email or we get that phone call, can you help me get a house? And we can go home tonight, if this amendment is passed, we can go home tonight and say to our people, we've actually achieved something and we've done something for housing and for the people that are needing housing. So I will support it. And that's me speaking briefly, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you for being brief, Councillor Kimber. Councillor O'Leary, you have already spoken to this amendment, I'm afraid. So if there's nobody else,
Councillor Haynes.
Sorry, Councillor Haynes is last. So there's Councillor Jesperson.
Councillor Sherry Jesperson, Hillforts and Upper Tarrants Ward. I'm going to say something that's a little bit unpopular now. I think I have great sympathy with what you're trying to achieve with this amendment, and we would all absolutely agree that we need more affordable homes, more social homes, more homes to rent in Dorset for all the reasons you've outlined. But I have really grave concerns about hypothecating a small part of our budget. It's not the way we budget in this council, and we would be doing this on behalf of an incoming council. And I just feel that we haven't discussed this in enough detail, and we really haven't an existing track record of hypothecating our budget. So I'm uncomfortable with doing that, and I think it's bad policy making to be changing the way we budget on the hoof. However profoundly we may all support the sentiment of it. So I'm afraid I'm a bit concerned about that aspect of this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jesperson. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Mark Roberts, Chesil Bank. I go back to when, in my seconding, when I said that we shouldn't be trying to tie a future administration. I, like Councillor Jesperson, support the ethos of this, but I suspect it is showing a lack of anticipation from the opposition that they will actually be that administration because they want to bring it now.
Thank you very much, Councillor Roberts. Can I announce that we have 1 minute or we have to vote to extend the meeting? We have the last person to speak is Councillor Haynes. So could we propose that we extend the meeting, please? Have we got all those names down there?
I think we've got enough names.
Okay, carried. Thank you very much. Before I go back to Councillor Haynes, who will be the last person to speak, is there anybody else that has a burning desire to speak here? Councillor Hope.
Chair, I did ask to speak at the end of the debate, so I would like to come in after Councillor Haynes, if possible. Okay, I'm happy to come in now. So, members, the reason I support this amendment, and I'm pleased to second it on behalf of Councillor Jill Taylor, who's unable to be here this evening, is for the fact that for many times I've sat in this chamber over the last 5 years, or the virtual chamber, those who recall the COVID times, And we have talked about the need for this council to support the housing crisis. And we've not declared a housing crisis as we did the climate crisis, but we all are aware that there is a housing crisis. And this will play a part in helping Dorset support that housing crisis. It will mean, and as my leader there, Councillor Island, has said, the Liberal Democrats take control of this council in May. These will be council-built houses. But if they're not, there'll be social housing if we go ahead a different way. It's time we put our money where our mouth is. This is the opportunity to do this. This is income that we didn't have in our hands until this legislation, and I wholeheartedly support the amendment and hope that members in the chamber will also.
Thank you, Councillor Hope. I'm proposing now to ask Councillor Haynes to have her right of reply. She has to be the last person to speak, so if there's anybody I've missed, will you please wave at me? Okay, thank you. Councillor Haynes.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I absolutely have total sympathy with this, and in fact, Gary Suttle said in answers in the budget speech that we should be using our land and supporting our community land trusts and looking at any other ways possible to bring forward affordable housing to Dorset, because there simply isn't enough. However, this isn't the way to do it. The amendment is on a set of unknowns. We haven't got the money yet, and we don't know what it'll amount to. We don't know what the exemptions will be. We have to share with the other people that precept, the other organisations that precept. It doesn't come into force until 2025. There'll be a new council then. We have no idea what the financial pressures will be on the new council. For example, the government repayment of the large debt and high needs block, which we know is a considerable risk to this council. This is revenue money, it's not capital money. And if you're going to build things, it needs to be capital. So there's a bit of a flaw in the nice idea, because I would agree it's a nice idea. Any revenue is already in the council's medium-term financial plan. So that's a further flaw in the workings of this. And finally, the new administration can change this. Well, it doesn't matter what we're voting for today, and to be quite frank, it's a waste of my time and your time, because within 6 months of today's date, they can raise, lower, or change it altogether. So what is the point of this debate? I have no real idea today.
What's his name in the paper?
I'm sorry, Chairman, but this is actually a typical attention-seeking action from the opposite.
Excuse me, Councillor Haynes. Please be very careful about the language you're using. Right, we will now vote, please, on the amendment.
The vote is now open. Apologies, one moment. Just bear with us, councillors, and we'll restart for you. One moment. Apologies, councillors, just got a slight technical hitch, which we are fixing.
Right. Right, members, because the voting system isn't working, we're going to do a manual count. So first of all, I'm going to ask those in favour of Councillor... Sorry, we'll just try it one more time because that would give us a recorded vote as well. Right, thank you, it's working.
Please do vote now. Councillor Christopher, would you... Bearing with us, councillors, the vote is now closed. And the results of the vote are 29 in favour, 18 against, 7 abstentions. The amendment is therefore carried.
Thank you, Susan. Now, members, this now becomes the substantive motion, so you will need to vote again. I knew you'd be thrilled. And then we've got it done.
Yeah. Thank you, councillors. The vote is now open. Carol there. Councillor Jones, would you mind voting for us again, please? Thank you. Councillor Pipe, would you mind voting for us again, please, so we get your vote? Thank you. Thank you, councillors. The vote is now closed. The results of the vote are 50 in favour, 3 against, no abstentions. The substantive motion is therefore carried. Thank you.
Excuse me, not quite. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming this evening. Safe journey home at 9:41. I'm closing the meeting. Thank you. Oh, right.